Welcome back to the channel. So today we've got another interview with Gallagher, and we're going to be talking about all things copywriting, webinars, VSLs, and all that fun stuff. So as always, I'll hand over to the guests to introduce themselves. So yeah, Connor, do you want to tell people a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yep, so my name's Gallagher. I've been specialising in webinars and high-ticket sales presentations for the last 6 or 7 years, working mainly with info businesses, coaches and consultants. I lost my thread.
No, that's cool. That's fine. That's a good place to kick off from. I think it's interesting because most people we've had so far have been pretty much just email copy. Some do sales pages, some do ads, but email is definitely the main thread. So I think diving a bit into what it takes to be a webinar specialist copywriter is going to be quite interesting. So,
Okay.
what's a typical day for you, or what's a typical project look like for you? What's your main bits of work that you do for clients?
So typically for me, it's end-to-end. So the entire project from start to finish, webinar, slides, script, emails, landing page, thank you page, all that good stuff. Typically, project will take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So initially, it will be taking on the client, doing like a research process, questionnaire, extracting all the pain points, desires of the market, and then building the presentation around those really.
Nice. So do you just have one client at any one time, or do you find that you actually can take on more than that?
Yeah, so I have a couple of retainer clients, and then at the same time as that, I take on the one-off projects. So I normally do like 4 to 6 bigger projects per year, and then I've got my retainer stuff that ticks over in the background at the same time.
Got it. Nice one. So have you always been into webinars for your copy then, or has there been any sort of different points along the journey?
To be fair, no. So initially it started out more generic stuff, so it would be sales letters, landing pages, ads, emails, a mixture of all of that stuff. And then obviously around about 5 or 6 years ago, I saw the sort of trend moving towards webinars, particularly in my space. Like a lot of info marketers were, running high ticket webinars, using ads to drive traffic to those. And I saw a gap in the market. So, naturally I moved into that, and that's kind of where I specialise now.
Nice. So in terms of a typical day, then you mentioned a project takes 4 to 6 weeks. Is that kind of full on 8-hour days? Do you work sort of less than that, more of a lifestyle business? What's the score with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere in the middle, really. I wouldn't say I'm sort of like semi-retired or anything like that, but it's so my day typically I'll wake up around about 7. There's no like set 5 a.m. starts or anything like that, nothing crazy. Head to my local Costa, do a couple of hours of work there, generally head to the gym, come back, work on my own content and stuff for an hour or so, and then back to client work till about 3-4 o'clock. I've got a daughter as well, so I like to sort of work around her. So I've got plenty of time to spend with her, pick her up from school, play with her, that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Nice.
not too bad.
Awesome. So yeah, talk us through the process a bit more then, because I think a lot of copywriters, they do some research, they may work with clients a bit longer, but it sounds like the process you've got is pretty involved, and it's much more in depth, I guess, than people might like to think that copywriting is. So what's your process from start to finish? If I'm a client, I come to you and say, I've got no assets, but I want to run a webinar, what would you do with me?
Generally, I only work with people who have got something existing already, so like a validated offer, just because with a webinar, there's so many variables that could potentially affect the conversion. So with somebody who's got something brand new, it's very difficult for me to sort of flesh out their entire offer for them and do all of that kind of stuff, which effectively I could have just do for myself. And then obviously sort of put all that time and effort into making sure that the offer is validated and converts. So I'll generally take someone who's got something already, either an existing webinar, an existing sales page, or some form of presentation, and I'll help them improve that. The way that I do that is through, I've basically developed a webinar optimization system, which consists of like 45 different split tests that we can implement on their webinar. And generally, all it takes is like 2 or 3 rounds of split tests to see quite a dramatic uplift in conversions. So.
Nice. So what sort of stuff are you seeing working at the moment? How's the landscape shifted in the last few years?
The landscape has shifted quite a lot. So I think with attention spans and social media and all of that kind of playing a part, I'm seeing a lot more short form stuff converting better now. So whereas 2 years ago, I was doing a lot more 90-minute, 2-hour presentations, now it's more 10 to 30-minute sort of shorter movies, if you like. Not even necessarily following the traditional webinar structure with the whole introduction, you give out the old, the long bio story and then do the 3 secrets. It's more about mixing it up and sort of looking at where the market's going. And like I say, it is generally shorter form content. So we'll take that process and we'll just condense it down and give people just, what they need to know to make a decision really, and no more than that.
I think it's interesting because I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and we had a guy there who runs a like webinar software company, and he basically said the same thing. He said he's always been a long form guy. He wants long form to do well, but they're finding that 15-minute and 35-minute, I think he said, VSLs are kind of the sweet spot at the moment, which again for me was almost quite surprising. So I'm like, well, if you're making a big ticket purchase, surely you need more than that. But do you find you're still able to sell those big ticket items, or is it more like book a call funnels that are doing well? What's happening with that?
Yeah, so book a call funnels more for the coaches and the consultant space. For the info marketers, people sort of in the internet marketing space selling, I guess it's courses and programs as well, but to a slightly different audience. That's slightly different. I lost where I was going there.
That's right.
What was the question again?
That's cool. So, are you still able to sell kind of bigger ticket items with a shorter webinar?
Yes. So basically, with that, it comes down to the sort of awareness and sophistication level of the market. So if you're going after somebody who knows they already need a solution, that person isn't going to need all that 90 minutes of education that somebody, maybe. So let's take the internet marketing space, for example. You look at beginners, they come in, they don't know much about sort of how to build a website, how to structure the business, how to build a funnel. So they're going to need a lot more education to see how the whole process fits together. Whereas if you're talking to somebody who's more qualified, is aware of the problem and is already actively seeking out a solution, then that person isn't going to need quite as much. I've heard Travis Sargo use the golf ball analogy before. So how far is the person from the conversion hole? Mm-hmm. And the closer somebody is to the conversion hole, the less kind of education and work you need to get them there. So generally with those people that are in that coaching and consulting space that have got a very clearly defined target market and they know who that person is and they can speak to them very directly, you find the shorter form stuff does generally convert better.
Got it. So let's say then you've got a newbie to internet marketing and you want to sell them a product that's, I don't know, $1,000, just for example. Would it be a case then, like, do you need more educational content before that? Do you need to sell them something cheaper to start with and then, resell them on a bigger ticket item there? How would you go about that as a VSL webinar copywriter?
Yeah, so I think with that one, there's going to be a bit more education required. It may be a case of, depending if you're running ads as well, you're probably going to need something smaller ticket to actually bring that person in, validate your ad spend, and then probably upgrade them into that once they're sort of a bit more indoctrinated and qualified. That's probably the way I would do it. But it does vary. Everybody's different. Some people are driving cold traffic. Some of my clients rely more on affiliates and their own email list. So it really depends on sort of where the client's at and what they're looking for, really.
Got it. Like it. So let's go back to the start then. So I know that before this we talked about your background in sales and then you kind of went and got a job, and won't spoil the whole story, but what was your start? I think you started pretty young at this, right?
Yeah. My story is a bit of an interesting one. So around about the age of 15, 16, I knew quite early on I didn't want to go down the whole college, university route. My dad, when I was younger, had shares in racehorses. My uncle owned racehorses, so I've always kind of been in that sort of thing. So I had this idea, I don't really know if it was kind of influenced by my dad maybe at that age, to create a sports betting website that would offer information, statistics and tips on upcoming horse races. And this is all before I'm even old enough to gamble myself. And I spent basically about 1.5 2 years running that. I built a list of around about 250 people purely through organic content. So I was doing like one guest blog post a month, and that was bringing me like 50 leads. And I basically launched a subscription service. So I built up like a bit of a relationship. And this is definitely where the markets have changed over the years. So I spent about 4 months just building a relationship with this list, giving away free content, sold nothing. There's no way that would work nowadays. People would switch off. So with that, and then basically I upsold them into a £10 a month membership. So I actually converted around about 60-70% of the list that I had at the time into paying customers, which was quite good. And that's when I kind of realised, I put together like a VSL. It was only about 10 minutes, dead basic. I preferred the persuasion side of it and the marketing more over time than I did to the actual, for a 16-year-old lad, horse racing is not the most interesting of topics. So I decided to then take that and then obviously move into the copy side of things. What I didn't know how to do at the time really was get clients. So at that particular time, I'd put an ad up on the Warrior Forum. on the Warriors for Hire section, just sort of advertising my copywriting services. And I think it was something like, I'll write you a sales letter for $4.97 or something crazy like that, super cheap. And the first person who reached out to me, believe it or not, was Josh Bartlett, the owner of Thrivecart. So he'd had somebody let him down. This was his first launch for his product Easy Video Player, I think it was, back in the day. And he'd hired a copywriter who'd let him down and basically said, look, you've got 48 hours to write me a sales page. Can you do it? So didn't really have any idea what I was doing at the time, if I'm perfectly honest, but I just kind of said yes and figured out how to do it after. And basically what I did, so I was living with my parents at the time. I locked myself away in my bedroom for about 7-8 hours straight, wore my dressing gown literally, and cranked out this sales page. And I don't really know what I was expecting it to do, but I was quite pleased when it did 100k in about 13, 14 hours. I don't actually know exactly what it went on to do, but obviously Josh did quite well out of that and has gone on to, hit the heights of success since. So
Not a bad ROI for a 497 sales letter.
not bad at all, yeah.
Just going back to the sports betting thing, interesting. I find that obviously as a 16-year-old, were you the face of that business, or did you run it more as a faceless type business?
No, I was actually, to be fair, I had two different, I rebranded a couple of times. So initially, I put an ad in a magazine, just literally like it was a Racing Ahead magazine, I think it was called, and it's obviously got like a readership of 20, 30,000 people monthly. I put a quarter-page ad in that for about £400, and it brought me around about 50 paying members, something like that. And then eventually I did do a rebrand. That one was literally the most basic sales page you've ever seen. It was probably about 300 words, pure pitch, no testimonials, no picture of me, no proof. It was just, here's what I've got, do you want it? And it converted like crazy, I don't know why. Whether that was just, again, sort of speaking to a solution-aware audience, they knew what they wanted and I was putting it in front of them perhaps. But then I did do a rebrand and created more of an about page with a picture of me and sort of explained why I was passionate about this, which isn't entirely, it's not untrue. I've always liked sort of horse racing. It's just, as I said at that stage, I quickly learned that it was more the persuasion and the marketing and really understanding, getting inside the head of what made people tick. That was what sort of got me going. So, yeah.
What would you do differently now if you're going to start that business today?
The horse racing one or the copywriting one?
Horse racing, sorry, yeah.
I think the big mistake I had back then was I didn't really have a sort of clearly defined strategy for bringing in customers and clients. I think if I was doing it now, I'd probably, there's a lot of red tape with those sorts of industries in terms of paid ads and stuff like that, but I'd probably drive traffic to some sort of free course perhaps, or low ticket course that I could do a little bit of education, show my methodology. So this is how I approach, the selection process of picking these horses or whatever it may be. Sort of demonstrate my expertise through that, and then probably try and upsell them into the membership as opposed to just going for straight sale. But yeah,
got it.
No plans to go back there anyway, to be fair.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question was, have you ever been tempted to go back? I'm guessing. No, guessing not.
I'd rather gamble on myself now, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. Good pun. So copywriting stuff then. So wrote the sales letter, did amazingly. What happened next?
So basically, one thing led to another. It kind of snowballed from there. So, and this is something I've found throughout my career. I don't know if you've been the same, but word of mouth, like with these people that, have 6-7 figure businesses, they're generally quite well connected as well. So with Josh, he referred me to Matt Wolf, who referred me to Joe Fair, who referred me to somebody else, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So I think within around about 2 weeks of getting that result for Josh, Matt Wolf, who was one of his best friends at the time, I think they'd been through Alex Jeffrey's coaching program together. He sort of reached out within a few weeks and said, I'm looking to replicate what you did for Josh. Got a launch coming up. Can we work together? So I worked with Matt. We had a really good result together. I think it was 30k in 7 days, something like that, which back then wasn't too bad. And then, yeah, like I say, it just sort of snowballed from there in terms of referrals and word of mouth. So, yeah.
And you said to me that you actually got a job in sales at some point. So was that before this or was that after this?
Yeah, so I think, I'm not sure on the exact timeline. I think I started the horse racing thing around about the age of 16, ran it for a year and a half, 2 years. And then I think I've become a little bit disillusioned with the content creation side of that, in terms of, like I said, it wasn't really something I was fully passionate about. It was just a case of, I don't really want to go to school, go to college, university. I want to start a business of some kind. And that was really all I sort of knew. And I'd say probably influenced by my dad a little bit. Sorry, what was the question again?
Just in terms of the timeline when the sales job came in.
Yeah, so basically, I stopped doing the sports betting thing, and then I went and got a job doing direct sales. So I was selling advertising space in hospital publications, of all things. Probably sounds a little bit unethical. It wasn't too bad. And from there, I went on to selling energy. So I was selling like gas and electricity, business to business. So actually, I'd do the calls on the phone. So I literally just cold call these businesses up, say, hey, I can save you money on your energy bills kind of thing. Can I come and see you? And then you go down and meet these people and try and close them face to face, which was brutal. Definitely a good education.
Brutal in terms of getting out of your comfort zone, embracing rejection, like the stress, the pressure, everything, like
all of the above. I think, yeah, definitely. The cold calling for me was, having never done anything like that before, and probably being quite introverted naturally, it was definitely a step outside the comfort zone. But I think those skills that I've learned through that process, in terms of dealing with rejection, getting knocked back, and that stands you in very good stead, certainly as a copywriter, I think.
I think it's interesting because a lot of the time, whether it's copywriting or another business, we do worry a bit about getting ourselves out there, and we worry about what we hear and know and that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing that kind of thing, it's a real baptism of fire, but it probably helps you just actually, when you do hear and know, when you get work with a client, and as we all know, you don't always knock it out of the park, and you have to have those difficult conversations. I'm guessing that really does kind of sharpen you to dealing with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And in terms of like the high ticket selling as well, obviously, I'm dealing a lot of the time with 6, 7, 8-figure business owners. So, you get on a phone with these people. And what's interesting is a lot of those same patterns in terms of things that were said, language patterns and things like that, back from my days in business to business selling, I still use the same things now. So I think that's interesting. There's definitely parallels there, if you know what I mean.
How long did you do the B2B for?
Around about 18 months, 2 years, something like that.
Okay, still doing copy on the side, or was that on the
little
back
bits?
end? Okay.
Yeah, little bits. So just keeping it going. I think the main thing I was struggling with at that time was I didn't have a consistent sort of process for attracting clients. So it was sort of just word of mouth, relying on what came in, and I didn't really, like I say, have that client acquisition system. So yeah, that was probably why I did that at that time. And then once I sort of started to build up those skills, build up the client base a bit more, I went full time into the copy.
Got it. And what year was that roughly?
You're going to be going back to around about 2013, 14, somewhere around there, I would say.
Cool. So then
I've been about 23.
Got it. So 2013 then, full time into copy. What was the rest of the journey from that point?
The rest of the journey in terms of what do you mean?
So like, how do you go about kind of, were you doing webinars mostly by then, or was it other stuff?
No, again, that was just sort of position myself as like a generic copywriter, if you like, which I would tend to sort of steer away from nowadays because I think it can position you as a commodity. But I was doing a little bit of everything. So I was managing email lists. So I had a client who had an email list of like 400,000 subscribers. We were sending over 2 million emails a month, easy. So I managed his list for a couple of years. VSLs, no webinars back at that time. It was mainly sales pages. I've always preferred the longer form stuff. Mm-hmm. I'd rather get my teeth stuck into like a long form sales page. Like I say, something I can immerse myself in rather than writing like a 10, 15-minute email, for example. So I'd say I've always kind of focused more on the long form. It was just less webinar sales presentation based then and a bit more of everything.
Well, I also think that I've kind of done the same. It used to be a lot of long form, and now it's kind of much more shorter form stuff. But I think it's probably easier to do it that way round than to start with short form ads, very short emails, and then try and do longer form afterwards. I don't know if you feel the same, but in my mind, it's kind of like I've always wanted to learn the longer form stuff because you get every single element that way.
Absolutely. And I think, like you say, you can take those elements and you can break them down, can't you? So, if you've got a 20-page sales page, you can take snippets of that, some of the key points, emotional triggers, and turn those into ads or emails or whatever it may be. I think it's very hard to do that if you haven't got that as a base, as a starting point to work from.
Yeah, agreed. And I suppose as well, you say about you're doing email list management and that kind of stuff. Do you think that having a bit more of a behind-the-scenes look at everything gave you more of an insight as a copywriter? Because again, a lot of copywriters, I think they go, I just want to write emails. I don't want to look at databases and tech stuff and all that kind of thing. And to be honest, I'm kind of the same as that. I just give me a Google Doc and I'm happy. But
yeah, same.
For you, was that helpful as well? Or did you find that actually maybe it's even just, I don't know, a hindrance or neutral perhaps?
No, I wouldn't say it was a hindrance. I think it gave me that sort of full picture understanding of what, a 6 and 7 figure business owner, what are they actually looking for? Because I think as a copywriter, you can have in your mind, you think your client wants more money, more sales, more profit. And oftentimes those things are not right at all. It's more, they want more autonomy, more free time. They want to be able to systemize the fulfillment so they can step away from the day-to-day delivery. So I think that gave me that big picture understanding of what are my clients actually hiring me for in a way. And a lot of the time it's not about more money, more sales, more profit, more conversions. It's about more time for them and what they want the lifestyle to look like. And if you can sort of help them bring that to reality, I guess it's a no-brainer.
Something I say a lot to people starting out, because they think, oh, I've not only been doing this a few months, and what do I know? And I'm not on A-lister yet, and that kind of thing. And there's an argument to say that, yeah, if you want to charge 20k for a VSL, you need to be an A-lister, whatever that even means. But a lot of the time, I do think it's about what can I do to make a client's life easier? Like, can I bring more ideas to the table? Can I take some work off their plate? Like, even if your emails are only 1% better than what they could do for themselves, if that's freeing up their time and they're getting back 2 hours a week to work on other stuff, like that's often enough for a win for them to pay you a pretty decent fee just to do that.
For sure, yeah.
So I think that, positioning yourself, again, it's like, think of all the you do it with a product, right? You wouldn't just say, oh, this is the one benefit of the product. There might be a core benefit, which as a copywriter, it's probably you're going to make more money when you hire me, but you would have those side benefits as well. And I think from a positioning angle, yeah, if you can position yourself as, oh, I help you win back more time, you can work on other stuff, other parts of the business, work, cliched phrase, but on the business rather than in it.
Yeah.
That's really not a bad angle to take sometimes in your marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So then you mentioned sort of the start of your process. I'll go back to that. The research phase, it's something that a lot of people like to maybe not skip, but like try and shortcut it. And I want to sometimes the same as that. I'm like, I just want to get on and write. But I'm guessing for you, the research phase certainly sounds quite involved. So how long does it take and what might that look like with a new client?
Okay. So let me first preface this by saying how I came across this was by trying to write copy for about 4 or 5 years without this. So I tried to skip this process. And when it came to webinars, I found I couldn't skip it at all. I don't know why, whether it's because you've got the longer sort of education, you're asking people to stick around for a 90-minute, 2-hour presentation. It's got to be dialed in to their sort of specific hopes, dreams, desires, pain points. And I think if you skip that process, as copywriters, I've been in this game for nearly 15 years. You've been in it a while too. We do understand to a degree what makes people tick. But I think in terms of the individual market and the market within the market, in terms of, so if a client's got a list of 50,000 people, those 50,000 people might be quite heavily indoctrinated to that client's process that they teach. Speaking to that market is going to require specific language patterns and an approach that maybe you wouldn't take with the market as a whole, if that makes sense. So typically what the process will involve is I'll get on a call with the client. We'll talk about sort of some of the angles they've used in the past, what sort of, things they think make their clients tick. What does a day in the life of your ideal client look like? Who are your competitors? What sort of prices are they charging? What do you charge by comparison? Why do you charge that much? Is it because, you sort of looked at what your competitors were doing and thought, well, I'll charge about the same? Or is there some method behind the madness? So we'll look at what they're doing, and then I can go away then and look at the competitors, look at what they're doing. So I'll get all of their funnel as well, go through their funnel, the elements they've got already, and then basically we'll do a questionnaire as well that will extract all of those pain points. Sometimes even a deep dive survey if I feel it's required. We'll survey the list and extract the pain points and then plug those specific language patterns back into the copy when we're writing it, whether it's webinars, emails, whatever it may be. But that process can be quite involved. So it's basically a client interview, a questionnaire, and then possibly a survey as well, if required.
Cool. So you've got all that. What's the next step? Have you got go to a framework? Do you just start writing? What's your next move?
No, I can't just start writing. So generally what I like to do, I just start with a blank Google document and I'll just flesh out in note form in terms of like an outline. So I've got like the structure in my head, obviously, from doing this for a while. And I'll just basically extract all those pain points like we've done with the survey and the questionnaire, take them and go, well, how does this fit into, a structure? So generally what I like to do in my webinars, I look at the objections and the beliefs that the market has, any limiting beliefs that might prevent them from taking action, and then I break down those beliefs one by one. So I generally like to identify the 3 or 4 key things that I think we need to overcome this to get this person into a mindset where they'll be ready to buy. And then I will build the content around those key things. So we'll do like a quick intro, a little bit of authority building, trust sort of building and stuff like that. And then we'll move into actually tackling and handling those objections, breaking them down, and then make the offer at the end, whether it be, get on a call with me or actually buy my course or program.
Got it. I think the objection handling thing and the limiting belief stuff, I find that quite fascinating because when I got into copy, it was very much, I just thought you had to do the whole Gary Halbert thing of just sell the damn thing.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a place for that. And I do think sometimes people get caught in the weeds and they dance around a sale as opposed to making it. But certainly the more I've done, the more different markets, it does appear that limiting beliefs and objections are the big things to get around. So I might put you on the spot here, but let's say we've got an offer. Yeah. Pick whatever offer you like. Could you give us an example of maybe a limiting belief and how you would get around that?
Okay, so let's take the example of new mums who want to get in shape after having a baby, for example. So a big limiting belief or a potential barrier, if you want to use a more easier phrase rather than objection belief, is that they don't have time. I don't have time to go to the gym. So one of the things you might help those people do is like a time audit, for example, to show, well, if you take time from here and take time from here, you can actually find you might have an hour or 2 a day. So it's just basically looking at where the person is at and sort of how to overcome that belief, I guess.
And would you address those directly or more indirectly?
I guess it depends on the belief. If it's something that's more deep-rooted internal about themselves, you probably come at that from a more subtle angle, I guess. Whereas it's something perhaps about the product or something that isn't true, you can sometimes just squash those head on. So it is quite situational, really. But I think with internal beliefs, generally the rule with those is to be a little bit more softer in the way that you handle those.
Got it. Do you ever get any pushback from clients at all? As in, you'll do something that fits your structure perfectly, you think it'll work, and they just don't want to play ball with it?
Not too often. I think with the qualifying that I do and the experience that I have, and a lot of my work does come through referrals, I think people tend to respect my expertise. You will obviously get times where, clients suggest, could we maybe tweak this here and there? And as long as it doesn't detract too much from the structure and the overall sort of what's going on behind the scenes of the presentation, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, generally, I like to stick to the structure that I have that I know works. And I'll have that conversation with the client before we start the project.
And you mentioned before we sat down about AI and how you're using that. I think the phrase used was to try and duplicate yourself or replicate yourself or something. So
effectively.
What are you doing with that at the moment? Because that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so I spent the last 18 months sort of as soon as ChatGPT came out and I heard it was a thing. John Street, right?
Yes, yeah.
So I basically had a consulting session with John, and obviously I've been specialising in webinars for a long time. And what I wanted to do was take that and turn it into some form of more do-it-yourself program for people who maybe aren't quite at the level where they can afford to hire me, but they do need a webinar and they want to know how to get one built in terms of the structure. We talked about those belief patterns, so it just teaches them and walks them through that process. So I had a consulting session with John Street about how we could sort of flesh this out. And sort of as soon as I built the course, based on the back of that session, AI came out. So I was like, ooh, this would be so much better if I could turn it into something that had that sort of angle. And also, for me, if I can figure out how to do this with AI and sort of shortcut my process as a copywriter, potentially, do projects in half or a third of the time, I can double or triple my income. So it took me about 4 to 6 months just to really just get my head around the thing and how to use it. And then I started getting some quite good outputs. So initially I tested it with webinars and I built this entire 40 lesson course basically on how to build a webinar using AI. There's a lot of theory in there and a lot of sort of practical advice as well as just, here's how to use AI, because I think the difficulty is people still need to think for themselves as copywriters, as business owners. You can't just plug something into AI and expect it to do all the heavy lifting. And that's probably the core message that I have for people on that is when you're using AI, first of all, don't expect one prompt to do all the heavy lifting. But at the end of the day, it is just like a generative text tool. If you want it to spit out facts and data, you've got to bring those facts, that data, and really the human input if you want the best outputs from it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably get on my high horse a bit here, but the number one comment I'm getting on my ads at the moment is, why are you still selling a copywriting program? AI has made you guys redundant. I'm like, that's basically the perfect way of saying I don't understand anything about copy and marketing without directly saying that. And as you alluded to there, it's just funny because, again, this event I was at the other week, everyone there doing like 7, 8, 9 figures, multiple businesses. I spoke to a couple of guys who said, I've actually tried to make my copywriters obsolete by using AI myself, and it just doesn't do it. They're like, even if it's okay copy, they're like, it still needs massaging, it still needs human input. And so I think as copywriters, we need to be aware of it, because if you do just position yourself as a copywriter, that could make things more difficult for you. So you do need to be able to bring ideas to the table, be more of a strategist. But at the same time, I think it's interesting that AI is amazing and it works great for some stuff. Like for me, it's research, it's doing first drafts of things. But yeah, there's still a lot of limitations. I think that if more people understood that, maybe more people would actually get started in copy or put themselves out there a bit more.
I think that's where people go wrong with AI is they'll pull up a chat GPT window, they'll say, write me a 300-word email about dog training, and they'll wonder why the output is garbage. But it's because you've not spent any time sort of giving the AI the context on your business, your offer. So we talked before about the questionnaires. So when I take on a new client, I will run those answers through chat GPT and I'll go, give me a psychographic profile or breakdown of this ideal client. And then from there, it gives you something that you can build off of. But the biggest mistake you can make is expecting it to do all the hard work. That's not what it is. And as a copywriter, exactly, I would say it gets me 80% of the way there in 20% of the time, and the remaining time is spent editing and massaging and perfecting those outputs that it does generate.
I don't know if you do this, but I found that when I first started using it, I would be much more, I cringe now, but much more like, please write me this thing. Whereas now it's like, okay, here's the task.
Yes.
Do you understand the task? And almost like having a conversation with a human, and they'll come back and say, yes, I understand the task. Okay, here's some research. Can you actually summarize this research for me? And almost like making sure it understands it, which is quite weird. And it might be, we might have 6, 7, 8 back and forth before I go, okay, now please write me that post.
Yeah, I get that. I'm the same, and it is about breaking things down into micro bite-sized steps. But it's the same as working with a copywriter, essentially. You wouldn't hire a copywriter and go, don't do any research, there's my product, now write me a sales page. The output wouldn't be very good. So if you break it down into that same sort of process, think about research first of all, and then maybe creating like a unique mechanism or a hook or a big idea behind that promotion. You can break these things down into micro steps and then ultimately put it all back together at the end. And that is basically how I use AI and how I would recommend others get the most out of it.
So what would be your best tips then, kind of expanding on that point? If I'm a copywriter and I've maybe resisted using AI for a bit, what would be your starting points for me to leverage it?
I think one of the first things you can do is, it's something I call priming. Some people call it training your AI. A bit like what you said, before you ask it to do a task, you want to basically define the parameters. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want it to look like. Maybe even, so I have a base framework. I call it my base framework. So it stands for background, action, structure, and examples. So the background is basically all the background information, context, and details that it needs about the product. The action is the actual task that you want it to complete. Structure is, here's an example, or rather, here's the structure I want you to follow. So if it's writing an email, it might be open by, talking about the year just gone by, and then you break down the other steps for the email.
Example, was that the last one?
Examples is the last one, yeah. So that's where you actually provide an example of what you want the output to look like. So in my email course, for example, I've got what I call a second sale email, which is the second sale. The first sale you make is obviously, getting somebody over the line, but the second sale you make is when you bring them in, sort of reassuring them that this was the right decision for you. Welcome to my world. Here's what we're all about. So for that email, I literally break down the structure that I want it to follow. So I say, here's point 1, start with this, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, and then here's an example of what this email should look like. So I'll include an example I've written for a client or something like that. And that then trains the window on, like I say, the type of output that you're looking for, so it can come back with something that meets your needs.
I guess most people don't want to do that because it's more work than just asking for it. But like so much, I think if you put in the graft up front, it pays off long term.
Yeah.
Again, I find that I was writing for a client the other week and he's got quite a specific way that he talks and a lot of his stuff is on video. And so it did take a good sort of, I say 3 weeks, not a solid 3 weeks, but every time I went to do something for him, it was sort of adding a bit to that, as you say, the training window almost, in terms of,
Yes.
okay, actually he would probably say it like this. So I was doing most of the legwork. And kind of like if you did hire an intern, it's like at the start, it's more work for you than if you literally just did it yourself.
It is.
But
once you get it up to speed,
exactly.
everything becomes a little bit quicker, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The other thing I wanted to touch on is royalties. I know you mentioned that you had 1 year particularly that was really good for royalties. So what do you do with that? Is that something you implement with every client? Is it on some projects it works, some projects it doesn't?
Yeah, it's definitely on a per client basis. So the reason I did that was I was sort of just foraying into webinars, if you like. So to tell you the truth, I'd written the first one I wrote for a client. It flopped. It was doing like 4 or 5% conversion or something like that. They were running ads to it. It just wasn't hitting the numbers that they needed it to hit. So I was like, right, I need to go back to the drawing board. Something about this isn't working. And that's when I picked up a copy of Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets and learnt about sort of the process of breaking down beliefs and overcoming barriers more than trying to educate. If you're trying to over-educate a market that's already ready to buy, you're going to turn them off. And I think that's where I was going wrong. So I took out all the education part and made it more about, here's what you need to believe in order to buy. So as we spoke before about limiting beliefs, it was a process of more breaking those down and rebuilding them back up with the truth or what we needed them to believe in order to actually be in a position to invest with us. And I think when I made that sort of decision, that's when everything took off. But the reason so we spoke the other day and I said I'd done this webinar for a client and I earned around about $30,000 to $40,000 in royalties in an 11-month period off it. The reason I did that was because it was the first one I'd done in this new style where I was trying to sort of figure out how can we structure the presentation in a way to get the highest conversion. The first one for the first client didn't work. So for a different client, I just said, look, I'm learning this new sort of approach to webinars. He wanted a webinar and I said, why don't you pay me $5,000 up front, which is a lot less than what I would normally charge. And basically I'll do the rest on a 5% of sales basis. So this webinar ran on autopilot for around about 11 months on Facebook ads. It was doing a four times return on investment. And my 5% equated to around about $35,000 in royalties, I think, plus that initial $5,000. So I think it's just, for anyone maybe watching this that's a copywriter, it's a case of realizing that your clients are people. Mm-hmm. And like I said, there was no hard sell. It was an existing client, so we had that relationship. But it was just a case of, look, here's what I'm doing. It's something new. I don't want you to shoulder all the risk, so why don't we do this? And he loved the idea, and obviously it worked out quite well for him as well.
I like it. With royalties, with commissions, how do you structure that? Is it normally a set percentage like you had there? Can it vary? Because I know some people do things like they'll do their percentage on like the increase over the control, for example.
Yeah, Ian Stanley does that, doesn't he? I've never done that myself. It's always just been a flat percentage. I like to know where I stand. And then at least that way, if it is a flat percentage, if it flops or if it does really well, you kind of live and die by your own sort of metrics, if you like.
I think it keeps it simple, and all jokes aside, I'm a simple guy. So for me, it's always been the preferred model, just because I can't really be bothered with messing around too much.
Who can be bothered working out percentages and stuff like that?
Yeah, basically, we're writers, not mathematicians. So
so
how do you guarantee you get paid for that kind of stuff?
I guess you are your own best guarantee, I've never had it before where I've not been paid from a client. So generally what I will do is I'll take a 50% deposit up front and the remaining 50% upon completion of the project. I've never ever had an issue getting paid. And I do think you are your own best kind of insurance policy. It's about going above and beyond for clients, meeting deadlines, doing a little bit more maybe than what they ask you to or what they expect you to. So if they ask for a sales letter, maybe give them 4 or 5 different headline variations. Mm-hmm. These are little things that might not take you much time as a copywriter. You'll probably find if you've been writing a headline, you've probably got a note somewhere or a Google Doc with 20 different variations. Just send the client the document and they might find some value in it. So
I think it's interesting, again, talking to quite a few people doing these interviews, is that actually a lot of people just don't try that hard. And so if you're a copywriter and you do a tiny bit extra,
that's it.
Like clients are amazed at that sometimes. And that's my thing. When people say, oh, how do you ensure you get paid? It's like, well, first of all, you can do, use your own affiliate links for their sales stuff. You can ask for monthly reports. Maybe they're a company who already do have commissions and royalties, so they've got that structure set up. But ultimately, the best thing is, as woo-woo as it sounds, gut feel when you sign a client. Secondly, it's how you show up.
Yeah.
And thirdly, it's letting your results speak for themselves. Like if you're getting someone results, why would they want to screw you over? If someone's making me money every single month, I'm not going to be a dick and not pay them. Like,
Well,
it backfires on me.
If the relationship's a win-win and you're easy to work with, and they sense that you actually genuinely care about their business, I think that's a big thing, rather than just, they're a number to you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard.
Yeah.
Most of my business for the past 15 years has come through word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I've got that to a point where I don't really need to try and attract clients. It comes from basically being good at what you do and caring about people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's when you get to that perfect point of, as you say, you don't have to push for clients. And actually, if you do want someone, it's probably just a case of emailing someone and saying, hey, could do a bit of work.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone?
Absolutely.
So if you can get to that stage, I mean, is there anything particularly you would do to help people get to that stage, or do you think it is literally just do a good job and don't be a dick to people?
I do think it's that simple. Yeah, I don't have any special hacks or tips or anything that I can give on that. It's just don't be a dick and do good work. Really,
What about if you were starting over? So it's still 2024. I think, that's the year, isn't it?
Just
Still
about.
2024. You're starting new. You've got no contacts. You've got your skills, but that's it. There's no network. What would you do to get your first client over the line?
So are we saying, let's say we've got no proof, no testimonials, just completely blank slate?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I think what I would do in that case is I'd go crazy on content creation and I'd showcase the journey. So here's what I'm learning, Here's the sales letters I've broken down today. Here's the VSLs I've been through. Here's what I noticed about the patterns in each of these successful promotions. And I demonstrate that basically, I'm not fully up to speed yet, but I love this stuff. I'm passionate about it. I'm engrossed in it every day, and I'm learning every day. And I think that's a big sort of misconception among copywriters and among freelancers in general, is if you are just starting out, well, how do I get clients without any sort of testimonials or proof? Well, you don't necessarily need that if you can demonstrate that you've got the same skills as somebody who does have it. So it's just a case of showing, I'm capable of doing this, but, maybe I'm not up to speed yet. And there's always ways you can sort of, work around that. You could maybe offer to sort of like what I do with the 50% upfront rather than the full sort of percentage. You can offer special deals to get people in, and then once, they know you do good work, they can rehire you. But I would focus on showing the journey. So if I'm starting out as a new copywriter, I'm probably taking a few courses. I'd showcase that process, I'd show myself going through the courses. I'd explain what I've learnt and how I'd then be able to take that and apply it. Another thing, you can write samples, build a portfolio of samples, write copy for your own offers, create your own offers and write copy for those and use those as samples. And I think that's one of the best ways to learn as well. If people are in a position to put paid traffic to an offer of their own, that is one of the most, fast and brutal ways to learn, really, and to get good quickly.
Yep, agreed. With the documenting it, would you put that on social media?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd go to the places where my clients were hanging out. So for me, that's generally Facebook, potentially LinkedIn. So I know that for me, generally written content is the easiest for me to produce, so I'd go with that. If you're good on video, go with video. But I would just basically go to the place my market is hanging out, and I would show here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm learning. And at the same time, you'd make the occasional offer, wouldn't you?
Yep, perfect.
But that's probably how I would go about it.
Nice. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see newbie copywriters making?
I think one of the biggest things I see newbie copywriters doing all the time is just generic phrasing like, oh, if it's not X, it's Y, and stuff like that just cliche copy, if you like, for lack of a better phrase. What else? Probably not talking about the client results enough. I think even I'm guilty of this at times. Like, I can't remember the last time I posted on Facebook, purely because I don't need to. But at the same time, if you want to stay top of mind, you've got to be on top of that. So I think, definitely demonstrating the results that you do get, or if you don't have any results to show of, again, showing yourself, screenshots of yourself going through these courses. If you're hand copying sales letters, not something I would probably recommend. Show yourself doing that and basically just give people an insight into this passion that you've got for this new topic.
Yeah, it's one of those, as you say, documenting the journey is very powerful because it's always that thing where there will be people in your network who could do with copy being written, and it's more like keeping top of mind and just showing them
Absolutely.
that, again, it's not a case of, oh, I made £1 million, $1 million with this sales letter. It can just be, here's a course I'm going through. And I found that recently. So I just recently got, I say, back on LinkedIn. I was never properly on LinkedIn, but a couple of months ago I thought, you know what, I've got a bit of spare time. I'm just going to do a post today on LinkedIn, cleaned up my profile, that kind of stuff. And literally just from posting a couple of bits, I think it was repurposed content, had people who I was connected with on other platforms, but they didn't really use those. They're more on LinkedIn, reaching out and going, oh, hey, we've seen what you're doing. Yeah, can we have a chat about working together? It's like, that's literally just from very simple stuff, not even any real social proof. It's just been, here's what I've been up to, here's what I've been doing. So I'd say never underestimate that power of, oh, there might be someone out there who's just waiting for me to pop into their newsfeed, I guess.
That's it, for sure, yeah.
So in terms of what's next then, got any big plans? I know you're sort of doing stuff on your own offers. What does the next 12 months or so look like?
I mean, I don't know exactly, but my plan is to basically take this suite of AI courses that I've developed and turn it into some form of community. And I think I'm going to aim that at copywriters and freelancers who, are looking to basically leverage AI to speed up their writing time and to even get clients as well. So I've got some cool stuff I can teach on that. But yeah, basically would be, how to get clients, how to get good, and how to crank out copy quicker than what you are doing now. And I'll have a wider range of frameworks and SOPs to help them do emails, ads, sales pages, whatever it may be.
Nice. What's the distribution look like for that? Are you going to be doing organic, paid?
Yeah, I think I'm going to start with organic and just leverage my existing network. I have been playing around with some ads just with the individual products rather than the membership. And it's taken some time, in fairness, to dial those in as it does. So it's just a case of sort of finding out what works best. But yeah, I think I'm going to start with organic for the membership because I think there's quite a few people in my sort of network right now who would probably benefit from something like that. So
it's always interesting as well. I think being that sort of copywriter / offer owner, as in I've seen it as well. You all of a sudden you go from spending a client's money to spending your own money. It's like quite a big wake up call, really.
absolutely.
Not that any of us ever take a client's money lightly, but I do just think it's one of those things where you go, oh, okay, actually, if I have something that's not quite dialed in, that's not so great for the bank balance.
Yep.
And it does force you to, I guess, like you said, when you started out in copy of going into email management and all that kind of stuff, actually you see the other stuff that happens. And it sort of gives you that sharp realization of, oh, it's not just about, get anything out there and it will do, really.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy as a copywriter to sort of, not so much, it's very hard to sort of embody your clients' businesses, I feel like. That is definitely a skill that takes time to develop. But at first, you probably just see yourself as like this outside entity. Oh, I'm just a writer. This is my only job. But then, like you say, when you start running ads for yourself, you see how that all fits together as part of an overall business picture. And it does just give you that perspective of, it's not just the writing. There's other factors at play here as well, from ad targeting to, all different things like that. So,
got it. Penultimate question. We've talked a bit about how webinars have changed up to this point. What do you see as the development for sort of the next phase of webinars and VSLs and digital marketing?
I think I see more and more short form content. I think you'll see less and less long form webinars, particularly in the internet marketing and coaching spaces. And I think you'll see people shifting away from just the way things have been done in general. I think you'll see things become a lot more compliant because they have to be. Annex and Gal's obviously been talking about that a lot recently. I think funnels will become more compliant. I think you'll see people trying things like, so for example, in the past, you'd educate somebody for 60 minutes and then you drop your price. I think you'll see people doing things where they drop the price earlier in the presentation. They're transparent about the fact it's a promotion. They're not trying to hide it. And yeah, I do definitely, the big thing for me is I see basically a shift away from long form content towards more short form VSLs, presentations, somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes, depending on the audience. I think that's the big takeaway. Like I say, I'm doing more and more of those for my clients now than anything else. So
the transparency thing is interesting as well, I think, because I've certainly seen it where it's never been an approach that I've liked, but I'm seeing now the people who used to do everything was always on sale. It was always the last chance to get it. I've not got anything against daily emails, but they'd be hammering their list daily with offers. I'm just not seeing that work as well anymore. I think audiences are more sophisticated, they're more educated. So even if it aligned with you ethically by just pushing out promotion after promotion and it be, the secret to this, the next big thing for that, and you had a new product every other week, I just think people are wised up to that now. They're just they're not buying into it emotionally or monetarily.
Absolutely.
And I think we're looking at now, people are going to buy into people who they actually have a genuine connection with and feel some affinity to and some loyalty with. So, yeah, I'm on the same page that I think I've always tried to, for example, when I do a launch, I will say before the launch, by the way, next week we're having a launch. So if you have absolutely no intention of buying and you're turned off by sales stuff, don't open your inbox or don't open any emails from me until this date.
Yeah.
And that's always done well for me, but I think you're going to see more people adopting that approach, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I see quite a few marketers now at the bottom of their emails as well. If you don't want to hear about this particular promotion, just opt out temporarily.
Yeah.
I imagine you've read Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz.
Yeah.
And he talks about the levels of awareness and sophistication. I personally feel like we're at stage 5 right now. I feel like the market's heard all the claims, all the promises, and it reached a point where people don't believe anything anymore. So it's about finding a new way. And maybe what you said there about selling it more on the basis of you as an individual, because people buy from people. That's something I learned very early on in the B2B sales. Is if people can't buy you, they're not going to buy what you've got to offer.
Yeah.
And I think at this stage we've reached now where your claim of your product is no longer believable because the claims have just gotten outlandish. It's I'm going to buy from you as an individual. So if you can differentiate yourself from everybody else, I think that's the key.
Yeah, I've always said as well, if you can get to the stage where you send an email to your list and say, whatever the copy is, but basically like, hey, I'm putting something together, it's going to cost money, do you want to buy it? And you get people say, yep, I'm in.
Yep.
Like, that's the sweet spot because, okay, people are buying into me. So even if it's, whether it's copywriting, marketing, like for me, if it was something on ultra running or whatever, I'd be relatively confident of having enough people who'd want to buy it just because, it's been building that relationship over the years. And I think the days of, sort of the churn and burn approach to email marketing specifically, but marketing in general, I think they're not going to be lasting too long, should we say?
No. I think the people who are doing that, they'll probably find their listen stuff become more and more desensitized over time and just probably stop opening them altogether.
Yep, 100%. I'd agree with that. Awesome. Thank you for your time, mate. Really enjoyed that.
Likewise.
And if people want to find out a bit more about you, get in touch, where's the best place for them to go?
So I've got 2 websites. They can either go to theconnorgallagher.com, which is my website that talks all about my done-for-you stuff, and then aicopystudio.com is the site for all the AI products.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, if you head to those links, guys, I'll pop them both in the description as well, along with, as always, my free templates, my free class. And if you have any questions for Connor or for myself, drop them in the comments, like and subscribe, as always, and I shall catch you next time.